Hello, Evon. It's really, really lovely to see you. You are by a long way our most long distance Your Story participant, all the way from Virginia. So we're really delighted to meet you. We're Henry and Henry, that's Graham and Annette Henry. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about your really quite amazing story. And I think Graham wants to start with the questions.
Okay.
Yes. So Evon, it's lovely to meet you, and your story is quite incredible. Your story of weight loss and transformation. It really spoke to me personally when I spotted it on the internet about 2 weeks ago on Google, the Forks Over Knives interview that you did. It really spoke to me, as I say, because I've also undergone a weight loss transformation, and I could recognize some of the elements in your story paralleled my own.
Okay.
What struck me in particular about your journey and your story, what was interesting was it wasn't all plain sailing. The way you described it, you had some relapses, and you also experienced some learnings along the way.
Yeah.
So I thought if we could maybe start at the beginning, what was the initial catalyst for you to make changes?
So, basically, I've been battling refined food addiction and overeating for over 26 years. So as far back as when I officially became an adult and I was no longer under my parents' established structure of eating, which was actually pretty healthy, all things considered, I have been battling refined food addiction and overeating. And so over the last 26 years, I've tried multiple diets, read multiple books, etc., in an attempt to try and figure out some sort of balance. And around 2014 or 2015 is when I finally mustered up the courage to attend Overeaters Anonymous. Mm-hmm. Because as you mentioned, catalysts, one of the catalysts is that I'm just tired. I was tired of the same old, rinse and repeat, eat, overeat, feel horrible, gain all sorts of weight, and I was tired. So I went to Overeaters Anonymous for the first time around 2014 or 2015. And that's when I reached a turning point, because although I had already stopped eating meat for years, now it's been about 14, 15 years since I stopped eating meat, not seafood, but meat. That didn't mean, as I'm sure you all know, that I was eating healthy. Processed food was a massive part of my diet. So when I went to Overeaters Anonymous for the first time, it was there that I reached a turning point, because that was my first time hearing that overeating is a disorder and a disease and an illness. So I was relieved to discover that this battle wasn't my fault. And Overeaters Anonymous also gave me a sense of community that I had never had before. Like, oh, wow, there are other people that are dealing with this as well. And we all don't look exactly alike, because that was actually one of the reasons why I was hesitant to go to Overeaters Anonymous, because I was fearful and anxious that maybe I wouldn't be accepted because I wasn't massively obese.
Okay.
But I'm so happy that I did go, because once I got there, that's when I discovered that overeating and refined food addiction doesn't have one look. So once I went to Overeaters Anonymous, that I would say is more so what got the ball rolling more and more, because now I knew, oh, wow, this is actually, overeating is a disorder, it's a disease, it's an illness. So around the end of 2016 is when I decided to attempt to permanently cut dairy out. And because it was feeling so stressful, I added the challenge of unprocessed eating to not feel so stressed about quitting dairy. And it only lasted 11 days as far as processed eating, you know, and it worked. I was no longer thinking about cutting out dairy. That was not important to me. What was important to me was trying to figure out why was my brain consistently calling for processed food during those 11 days. It felt so difficult. And I don't like feeling like a prisoner to anything or anyone. So that 11-day experience at the beginning of 2017 prompted me to start researching what was going on. Why was my brain reacting like this? And as I started doing this research, that's when I started learning about the mental, emotional, physical effects of processed food, of overeating, and how it is prompted. That's when I started learning about the satiety index. I started learning about the pleasure trap and how we're hardwired to desire high calorie density, you know, foods, which contradicts common messages that we've been given in society at large. We are told that this is our fault and that all we need to do is moderate and, you know, we can control it and so on and so forth. So I found out about, you know, the motivational triad system and how that's the system that's designed within us to ensure survival through preferences for high calorie density and foods and energy conservation strategies.
Yeah,
you know?
Are you able to just give a little bit of background on that for anybody who hasn't read The Pleasure Trap and doesn't know what this motivational triad is? Because it's really interesting.
Yes. So I can't give you, you know, exact because it's been so long since I read it, but essentially, you know, it's about evolution is what I got out of it. It's about evolution. It's about how a long time ago, these systems within us that motivated us to go towards high calorie density in order to thrive, it was different because of the type of food that we had access to. We didn't have access to processed food all these many centuries ago. So high calorie density and accessing it was about survival, you know? And then eventually over the years, fast food came into play. And now this motivational triad is going wonky. It's going chaotic because it's like, we don't have to work really hard to get high calorie density anymore. We're able to pick it up really fast, and it's broken down in such a way that our bodies aren't benefiting from it. We're doing more sitting around. And for most of us who don't have this information about the motivational triad and the pleasure trap, we have no idea what's happening.
It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting because once you know what's going on, it seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? And
yeah, it really does.
But most people are not aware of this. They don't think consciously that this is going on. And it's when you're aware of it, you can actually stand a little bit outside of yourself and think, I know why I'm doing that. And just for anybody else that's listening, I think the work that you're the theory you're talking about, the pleasure trap, is based on the work by Dr. Alan Goldhammer and Dr. Doug Lyle on their book called The Pleasure Trap, which we've done a lot of reading of that, and we find it fascinating as well. So if anybody else is watching this, I think it's really worth looking at.
Absolutely. It's the number one book that I...
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's the #1 book that I suggest those who are interested in really trying to understand refined food addiction and overeating. It's the #1 book that I suggest that they get after my book.
Right. Yes, good. Yeah, that's on my mind, yeah.
For sure. What were you going to ask?
I was going to ask you, it's clear that you've done quite a lot of research. You were talking about, research into things like calorie density and the pleasure trap. How did you come upon these things? How did you find out? What did you do to find out about this information? Did you do
I just went online. And I just started Googling, what I felt like I was dealing with during those 11 days. Right. And that is how I went down the rabbit hole. And I started finding out about all of these different ideas, concepts, books, doctors, nutritionists. That's how it started, because I thirst for knowledge. I always have. And again, I wasn't interested in being a prisoner. So I needed to know, what is this? Because that was my first time ever challenging myself to go unprocessed, to actually only consume whatever it is that I fixed myself from scratch. And
that's one of the things I love about your story as well, is that you mentioned earlier in the interview about going to the classes, what were they called?
Overeaters Anonymous is actually an organization.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have
meetings. They have meetings.
Yeah. And of course we have things like Slimmer's World and Weight Watchers, and a lot of the time people
isn't like that though. This isn't like Overeaters Anonymous is an organization that has meetings, and they have sponsors if you would like. They have meetings around the clock, online, in person, over the phone, and it is literally about support.
Yeah, it's a bit like addiction orientated, essentially, is it?
Say it again.
It's addiction oriented in a way that, like, Alcoholics
Absolutely.
that kind
exactly. It's all a part of that line, Alcoholics Anonymous, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what I was saying is money. It's not about money.
No. What I was going to, the point I was making earlier is that a lot of people, if they've got a weight issue, they may go to Slim as well. They may go to Weight Watchers, and essentially they maybe don't go and do the research like you have done. It's kind of there's a protocol that you follow, and you're very much part of that structure. What you've done is you've gone out and you've really researched this, and that's what I think is really impressive, and
you've acted on it clearly. That's the exciting thing. What changes did you make on the basis of the research that you did?
So that's what I was going to say. I started implementing changes immediately as I was doing the research. I started trying to fix vegetables and get leafy greens, and essentially just familiarize myself with the kitchen in general. Because another thing about me and my story is that before that time frame, I had convinced myself that I didn't know how to cook and that I couldn't do it. So I had essentially been, as a single mom, raising my children from boxes and bags and frozen, processed this, that, and the other, and cans. So it was new for me. And as I was trying to implement these changes, as I was learning this information, I was also just getting familiar with the kitchen. Like, okay, so if I sit this pot on this stove at this temperature, okay, and this is what happens in the oven. It was funny for me, but it was also exciting. My youngest daughter, was there witnessing everything, and we made it fun too, because it was like, she wasn't used to seeing me in the kitchen. So it was interesting. So I started just making changes to what I was eating as I started finding out more information about how leafy greens contain thylakoids, which actually assist with cutting your appetite for processed foods, for salt, for oil, for flour, for alcohol, for refined sugar. So I started, figuring out, well, what kind of vegetables do I actually like? Because I'd also convinced myself that I didn't even really like vegetables. But once I started putting in this energy and this effort, then I started thinking, well, there actually are a few that I do like. So I'm going to start there. And, making sure that I had my starch as far as potatoes are concerned. I love potatoes. So I was like, okay, I can do this. And I just went from there, and I started also that year, I started connecting refined food addiction and overeating to extended periods of depression that I have been experiencing for over 20 years. So at the beginning of 2017, in the midst of all of this research that I was doing and immediate implementation of these changes, I dropped 40 pounds in 4 months at the beginning of 2017.
Wow.
And I was just experimenting because I was researching, I was trying this, I was trying that. But I can tell you all that I did not think that I would ever drop that much weight again, that I would ever be that size again. So it was a very interesting process that I now am able to help others with in regards to processing what it was like to drop that much weight in that little bit of time. And what I went through mentally, I was excited. Of course, I was putting on this clothes, these clothes, that clothes. I was excited, but I wasn't really paying as much of attention to, what I was discovering as I was eating these different types of food, because I just had a lot going on in regards to how new everything was, and new with me being in the kitchen for the first time. It was just a lot going on. So what happened is I experienced some family trauma later on that year, and I was hospitalized and diagnosed with, for the first time, mental illnesses, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. So as I received this assistance, as I was staying there in the psychiatric unit, that's when I really started being prompted even more than I ever had been before, because I've been a holistic practitioner for over 20 years anyway. So I've been connecting a lot of dots and already knew about self-care. But when I was there, I really had even more self-care realizations and started understanding more about adjustments that I needed to make. As I learned more about boundaries and how important it was for me to burn any kind of cape that I have been wearing for all of these years, trying to save everybody else and not focusing on myself. So since then, I have actually put together an 8-step process that goes by the acronym Selfcare. And self-care stands for focusing on saving ourselves, figuring out what actually excites us and what we like, loving ourselves, figuring out what that looks like from one day to the next, forgiving ourselves, and cutting out negatrons, people that are negative, cutting those out of our lives. The R stands for respecting ourselves and figuring out what does that look like, and not allowing anybody else to make that determination for us, but making it for ourselves and being open to that changing. And then the E is for embracing our journey as our own, and recognizing that we're all unique. Our journeys don't need to be alike. We don't need to be trying to compare ourselves to anyone else, but focus on the individuality and the uniqueness of our journey. And so I also released an ebook earlier this year called Let Go or Be Dragged, Learning the Healing Art of Letting Go, because I've just found that the divine art of self-care is a core part of this journey that I have been on. And recognizing how important it is to love ourselves and what that looks like, from what we're drinking to what we're eating, to who we're allowing to be around us, to what we're watching, to what we're listening to, and so on and so forth. So what happened is, as I experienced the different things that I did in 2017, was hospitalized and so on and so forth, and experienced some serious family trauma, I eventually got away from SoFast-free, whole food plant exclusive eating. And I never forgot how great I felt and how peaceful my brain started feeling as I started to calm those cravings for processed food. The more I was cutting out salt, oil, flour, alcohol, refined sugar. So I never forgot. And since 2017 until the beginning of 2020, last year, I kept trying. I kept trying to get back. I kept trying. And I just reminded myself, if I did it before, I'll do it again, And I've just shown myself patience, grace, and compassion. And I kept learning as well. I kept learning. And so at the beginning of last year, and I also kept analyzing why this worked and why this didn't work. And so at the beginning of last year, I came up with a 7-step process to the acronym of freedom. And I said, I'm going to try again. And freedom, yeah, it looks really good on me. And I successfully and sustainably, with the assistance of that 7-step process, have been eating SoFast-free, whole food plant exclusive for over 1.5 years now, since the beginning of last year. And that's how you all have found out about me, because I decided at the beginning of last year, without any knowledge that this pandemic was about to drop on us, that I was going to bring everybody along with me on the journey of learning how to eat SoFast-free, whole food plant exclusive. And I've just continued to do that, And what I will say is that inspiration-wise, outside of my children, because when it comes to my why, which is really important, figuring out, why do I want to eat this way? Why do I want to change my life? My biggest why is being tired of the pain that I've experienced over the years with refined food addiction and overeating, and the trauma that I cannot undo that I have bestowed upon my children. Those are my biggest whys. But outside of that, and my inspiration, are improving my relationship with my children, repairing bonds that have been broken throughout my journey over the years. But outside of that, as I've been on this journey, my biggest inspiration has also been other people that, as I've been sharing this journey, have been reaching out and letting me know that they have been experiencing this too, and that they have been encouraged by how transparent I am, and they're encouraged and motivated by the fact that I am super serious about making sure people understand that this is a journey. This is not a perfectly bow wrapped, thing. And I am not at some destination. No, that's not how refined food addiction and overeating recovery works. That is not how it works at all.
I can see how you've been an inspiration for others, because the way you've described your journey there and what you've learned. It's interesting to me as well that you've made a journey of discovery, not only discovering what is the solution for you, but also self-discovery, about learning more about yourself, and about learning to be compassionate with yourself, to forgive yourself, to allow yourself, which is so powerful.
Absolutely.
So I think that's just an incredible story. And I just wanted to go back a little bit into there's two things that you mentioned about the way that you were eating, which has been successful. And you mentioned about the calorie density issue. And then you mentioned about the specifics about no salt, no oil, no alcohol, etc. Do you want to just
SOFAs, because this is a new acronym for us. So can you just talk us through that?
SOFAs for everyone. SOFAS.
We're used to SOS, but not so much SOFAs. Yours is longer.
Okay. So Chef AJ is actually who coined that acronym. I'm sure you all already know. She coined the acronym SOFAS Free, and she was one of the people that in my research I found out about. And so SOFAS Free is salt, oil, flour, alcohol, sugar free. And the low calorie density part, and I eat whole food plant exclusively, not based. I love to make sure that I make that very clear, because I'm sure you all already know there's a big difference. So what I've been discovering is low calorie density, SOFAS free, whole food plant exclusive, is what really assists me with not thinking about the food after I've eaten it. I was thinking about this last night because I don't know if you all have seen on, whether it's my blog or my Instagram or the Facebook page of Eating for My Life, that I actually recently just had a bout with overeating, high calorie density, SOFAS free, whole food plant exclusive, as I've been dealing with some emotional things. So what I've been learning is that as a prisoner, or not a prisoner, as being free, I just want to eat whenever my body calls for fuel. And the type of food that works for that, and I'm not thinking about the food after I eat it, is SOFAS free, whole food plant exclusive, low calorie density, not high calorie density, as I just experienced again a few weeks ago. And that was super painful and super exhaustive. But I paid attention. And
Isn't it incredible how, even though when we know all this, we still sabotage our efforts by turning to,
because we can have all the it's true, we can have all the information in the world and life happens. And that is the biggest part that I have been discovering and been happy about, is figuring out how to live life with all of its ups and downs and eat SOFAS free, whole food plant exclusive, and sustainably do that. And so every day I've been finding it's still going to continue to be an evolution, this journey, and for me, what's most important is paying attention. paying attention, and I'm more in tune now because of how long I've been doing this. So gratefully, that really helped with me being able to turn around what just happened a few weeks ago in regards to, you know, overeating. I was paying more attention to my body. My body actually started to break down. I started experiencing pains that I hadn't been experiencing before in different parts of my body. And I'm watching it. And of course, you already know with overeating, you can't rest as well as you would like because your body's too busy trying to process all this food. And it doesn't matter if it's sulfite-free, whole food, plain exclusive. It doesn't matter. If it's too much, your body is still trying to process it all. So you can't operate. You're not feeling as light as you normally would. And it's hard to sleep because your body is too busy trying to process all this food versus just give you rest because it's not doing that, you know?
Yeah. That's really important because, you know, I have never had a weight problem, but that is still totally relevant even for me. And I think that's something for other people to hear and keep hearing because we've got so much available 24/7. You can go and do food shopping. It's always there. So you can always have it, but it's so much better if you just eat something that's more natural to what you want, when you want it, and is aligned with natural physiology rather than the construct that we have nowadays, which enables us to eat so much processed food.
Right. And that you're not left thinking about when you're done eating it. That right there, that is my major takeaway after what just happened is, hey, you know what? I don't want to be thinking about what I ate after I ate it. That for me, I'm finding is the number one key when it comes to sustainably continuing to eat like this. Low calorie density, I'm not thinking about the food after I eat it. It's done, it's over. What's next? I just gave my body fuel because that's what it asked for now. And that's what has opened up my life, which I conveniently forgot about recently. But I got my freedom back. So
you've essentially re-engineered yourself, haven't you? You've kind of you've rewired your thought processes around.
And that's what you have to do. You know, I'm an empowerment coach and I coach on refined food addiction and overeating recovery, as well as prioritizing self-care, self-love, and unschooling, which is another topic, but a way that I've been a lifestyle that I and my children have been in for over 10 years. But when it comes to coaching on refined food addiction and overeating recovery, one of the main things that we talk about is how important it is to actually reframe your thinking and conditioning that society has been giving us for all of the years that we've been here, recognizing that using food and drink as a form of celebration, as a form of comforting ourselves, is what can lead to overeating. And reframing our thought process to just look at the whole food plants as fuel for our bodies. And that's it. It's such a big difference. It's such a big difference.
So
I was just going to say, and that opens up your life, and it can be scary, but it opens up your life to get your dopamine hits from other things that are not food or drink related. That honestly was one of the, I would say it was one of the sticking points for me. Back when I first started experimenting with sulfite-free, whole food, plain exclusive in 2017 and 2018 and 2019, that has been like, every time I would try again, that had been one of the main sticking points was, well, what else am I going to do? If I'm not going to use food for comfort, if I'm not going to use food to celebrate, which is all I've known, what else am I going to do? What else is exciting? I used to look at food as my best friend.
Yep.
So
can I ask what food is to you? Sorry, what is food to you now? Do you enjoy your food? Because I'm concerned that people will hear this and think, well, I'm not going to enjoy food if I do this.
Oh, yes.
Really
oh, my goodness. You know, last year, as I was bringing everybody along with me on this journey, I got in the kitchen and I made sure that I enjoyed what I was eating. And you can find over 40 of my favorite SoFast-free whole food plant exclusive recipes in my ebook. And oh yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about cutting out additional salt outside of the sodium that's already naturally occurring in our whole food plants, the beautiful thing about cutting out salt, any additional salt, oil, flour products, alcohol, and any kind of refined sugar is that you learn how your taste buds and your palate learns neuroadaptation happens. And then you learn to appreciate the actual richness of the flavors of produce, of whole food plants. And it does taste phenomenal. It really does. They do. And also, when I was in the kitchen last year, experimenting with this and that, these different recipes, I really started understanding how important spices are and herbs are, and how, you know, flavor profiles. And this is how you wake your food up if you're in a transition period and you need it. Nowadays, no. Nowadays, I keep it so simple. I call it KISS. Keep it SOFAS-free or SOSF-free, simple, because I don't need that. And I was reminded thoroughly when I was just playing around with SoFast-free, whole food plant exclusive, high calorie density desserts, and calling myself trying to, you know, experiment with making this and making that, using dried fruit and nuts and dates and things like that. I was reminded that's the type of stuff that has me thinking about the food after I finish eating it. Whereas when I stick with just regular spices and herbs and low calorie density, I'm not thinking about it afterwards, which is where I want to be.
Well, as two people that have seen what it's like on the other side as well and decided to stick there like you have, we completely get it. And I think it's convincing others that maybe haven't made that journey yet, that it is actually somewhere that's worth being.
But you know what? You know what I've realized on this journey? I don't want to convince anyone. I just want to continue working on me. And anyone who, you know, happens to come up on my journey, if they are motivated, if they are encouraged, if they are sparked to think about what might life be like for me if I could experience that same freedom that she's experienced, then I'm grateful.
That is lovely. Yes,
you know, I'm grateful, and I'm told consistently it is one of the biggest, this thought process that I have is one of the biggest reasons why so many people are encouraged, because I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm just continuing to work on me. And people that meet me, or they see my interviews, or they just read what I'm writing, they can tell, oh yeah, she's actually really enjoying her life now. Her life has really opened up. And it has, as I've learned to get more into me and what excites me. What do I like to do that has nothing to do with food or drink? Oh my goodness. Everything. I'm a vocalist. I'm an international recording artist. I write. I'm a blogger. I write songs and poetry, and I paint. I'm a face paint artist, and I just do so much, and just getting more and more into what I actually enjoy. I get my dopamine hits from that now.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I'm excited, you know? Yeah. For
So
sure.
how can people find you? What's your the best way for people to find out about you and contact you?
Okay, so the best way is to access us online, whether it's social media or our website, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all Eating for My Life. And it's spelled just how it sounds, except there's a 1 instead of an I in the word life. So eatingformylife.com, EATINGFORMYL1FE.com, Eating for My Life on Instagram, Facebook page, and Twitter. And they can also just find out more in general about all of my endeavors and brands, and my girls, my daughters, at abundanceisourbirthright.com. And that's ABUNDANCEISOURRITE.com. And they can find out more also about the self-care and you know, the ebook Let Go or Be Dragged, Learning the Healing Art of Letting Go there.
Okay, and we will include a couple of your addresses anyway in the written part that goes in front of this. So they will be there. They'll be clickable. People can go straight to them if they want to.
I don't think I've ever heard so much wisdom packed into such a small period of time. So that was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
and I think really thank you for your time, Evon. It was lovely to hear your story. Really,
you're welcome. I'm happy to have been able to talk with you all today. I do want to share that if I had to pick one of the most important tips to share with others, is focus on what it is that we're choosing to eat. Setting out to intentionally just focus on what we choose to eat and really get into that has really been helping me to distract me from thinking about what I'm not choosing to eat, and thus avoid pity parties around what was or what I used to eat, and starting to encourage my brain to work against me versus working for me. So that is something that, you know, I wanted to share with everyone.
Well, thank you very much. And I think that's a really good point to end this interview. And just thank you again. Lovely to talk to you. And we'll just finish the recording, and we'll just, if you just stay on afterwards, we'll round things off.